This is a 1963 BMW 700, and it's a BMW from before BMW as we know it. This is rear engine with only 700 cc's. It weighs only 1,500 pounds, and it doesn't even have BMW's famous twin kidney grills. This is not a BMW like any we know, but it was hugely popular in its day and very important for BMW. Today, I'm going to review the BMW 700 and show you the quirks and features of a truly old school BMW. Before I get started, big news, this BMW 700 is currently for sale and it's being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. Yes, we do vintage and classic cars now, including this very special 700, which is a Luxus model, that means deluxe. It's a very interesting relic from BMW's past and you can buy it on Cars and Bids. So, once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to visit the live auction for this BMW 700, where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. All right, time for the quirks and features of the BMW 700 Luxus. But before I get into the unusual quirks of this car, I want to give a little context on where this car fits into BMW's history. So, by the late 1950s, BMW was not really in great financial straits. They were making basically two types of cars. There were luxury vehicles, were not particularly popular, and then there was the ultra small super subcompacts, the Isetta and the BMW 600, which were relatively popular, but obviously not tremendously profitable vehicles. And recognizing this financial trouble that they were in, BMW in the late 1950s decided to try to come out with a more traditional compact car, and that was this. And they created it by essentially stretching the chassis of the BMW 600, which was itself sort of like a four-seater Isetta with a big front door like the Isetta had. Not really a traditional car in a lot of ways. This was a much more reasonable, rational car, and it was not a luxury one. Even though that's what we associate BMW with now, this was intended to be more of a Honda Civic or a Volkswagen Jetta of its era, absolutely not like the luxury BMW models of today. And it was a big hit. BMW managed to sell around 200,000 of these in the late 50s and early 60s, and then they decided to start moving up market. They had just come out with the new class models, which were also a big hit, and from there they derived the 02 cars, the 1602 and the 2002, which sort of paved the way for the modern BMW 3 Series and the BMW we know today. And after this car, they bailed out of the compact car territory, of course, never to really return. Mini Cooper, kind of a return, but not really the same type of thing. This was really BMW's last attempt at an entry-level compact car like a Toyota Corolla type vehicle, the BMW 700. And it really did have a big effect on helping to keep BMW afloat during a pretty tumultuous period. So let's talk quirks and features. A big one is that the engine is mounted in the back, and what you would think of as the trunk, you look in here and there's an engine, but not a very big one. This is a flat twin, a horizontally opposed two-cylinder engine. Sort of like Porsches have a flat 6, Subarus have a flat 4. This is a flat twin, and it's only 700 cc's in engine size, hence this car's name, the BMW 700. They borrowed this engine from the really small BMW 600, but they enlarged it. In that car it was about 600 cc's, here it's 700. Makes sense. And as you can imagine, 700 cc's did not produce a lot of power. This only has around 30 horsepower. This is not the BMW performance that we have come to know. Again, it was an entry-level compact car. Nonetheless, BMW was proud of this car's performance. I have here an original brochure for this vehicle, and it says one of the craziest sentences I have ever read in any automotive marketing literature. It says, "Finally, the BMW LS Luxus," that was the version of this car, "is performance personified, full of verve and vitality. The stopwatch proves it. Acceleration from 0 to 60 is in a mere 32 seconds." They were bragging about their 32-second 0 to 60 time. Needless to say, times have changed. And speaking of times have changed, move over to the next page. You flip up this little image with these German kids in the back, and there's some writing here, and it says, BMW is famous for its long-standing tradition of building powerful 4-stroke opposed twin-cylinder engines. It may have been famous for that at one point, but times changed considerably since then, and there is no one on the planet who would now say that that is something BMW is famous for. That in their 32-second 0 to 60 times. Now, other interesting quirks back here. For one, you can access the engine without anything other than a button on the back of the car. There was no keyhole to keep this compartment locked. There was no latch inside you have to pull. You just walk up, push that button, it opens right up, and you get inside. You will also see some interesting badging back here. You have the BMW logo on the side, a very old school BMW logo where the letters all have serifs, and it's really almost seems hand painted. It's a pretty cool old school thing, and you can see how the modern BMW logo evolved from this. Now, on the trunk lid itself, the word Luxus is printed. That meant deluxe, and it was a version of this car on later models like this, had more equipment, it was more luxurious than earlier cars, although if that was true, I hate to see how Spartan the earlier models must have been. You'll see what I mean in a minute. You also back here have a badge that says LS, sort of in a font kind of reminiscent of BMW badging even today. LS was the designation given to the long wheelbase version of this car. Now, there were only 3 body styles of the 700 offered. There was a 2-door coupe, which this is not, because the coupe had sort of a fastback sloped design, looked more aggressive and exciting. There was a 2-door convertible, and then there was this model, the 2-door sedan. Now, 2-door sedan is a body style that basically doesn't exist anymore, but it was popular for a time. It was a car that had sort of a tall roof like a sedan, but only 2 doors for access. And the 2-door sedan, this car, was by far the most popular BMW 700 body style. The interesting thing, you're probably thinking, if you're making a practical compact car, why go with a 2-door sedan? But you got to remember, this was an improvement over the BMW 600, their previous economy car, which was also 2 doors, but one was in the front and one was sort of on the side. This was a much more traditional, rational type vehicle, even though they hadn't really gotten the 4-door thing down just yet. A couple of other interesting quirks on the outside of this car. For one, in back, you had tail fins, because the 50s, the early 60s, it was America who was leading the charge in terms of vehicle design. Everyone else was trying to copy, and tail fins were in vogue, and this car has them. You could even see this sort of Art Deco kind of angle that the turn signals and tail lights make, kind of reminiscent of 50s Chevy models that were some of the coolest cars in the world at the time. Also in this car, you have 12-inch wheels, not exactly the biggest. You can see the BMW logo on the center of the hubcap in the middle, and maybe most interesting, you can see kind of the beginnings of the BMW kidney grille. It is certainly not anything like we would think of the kidney grille today, but it's the sort of makings of it, these 2 twin grills that come off from the front turn signals on either side that sort of have this dual grille setup, and you can see how it may have evolved from here. Kind of an interesting style touch and worth pointing out. Now, the front trunk, since the engine's in the back, the front was the trunk, and it also requires no latch or locking key to open, even though it is the storage compartment for this vehicle. Again, this was a compact car. It was a basic bare bones vehicle, and you wouldn't want to leave anything valuable in the front trunk because anybody could just walk up and open it, which is kind of hilarious. Now, you wouldn't want to put anything valuable in the front trunk anyway, because the front trunk is also shared with the fuel tank, as you can see. And yes, it kind of smells like fuel in here. It may not be perfectly sealed in every way. This is true of a lot of old cars, including this one, and that's just kind of the reality. But you wouldn't want to store like a nice coat in here on your way to a dinner party, lest it come out smelling like fuel on the other end. Now, the other interesting thing about this front trunk with the fuel tank in there, this is also where you added fuel to the car. You can see the fuel filler neck and the cap at the front, but that meant that every time you wanted to add fuel, you had to open up the front trunk. So if it was raining and you needed fuel, you would open up the front trunk, and of course water would get in. That was just the reality of the situation, because that was the only way to access your fuel fuel cap for your BMW 700. And of course, when you move into the interior, you discover quite a few more interesting quirks and features of this very basic old school car. Starting with the door handle itself, which is actually pretty cool. You sort of push on the outer edge and then the other part pops out and you pull it open. The operation is not that different from like a new Tesla Model 3 or an Aston Martin door handle from the modern era. It's kind of a cool idea. Push the back and pull the front. When you open the door, you can see the door panel is pretty basic. You have this sort of cool Art Deco style look, but there's not much to it. You have a handle for rolling down the window. You have a handle to open the door. That's this right here. And then you also have one of my very favorite door items from this era, which is the quarter window. You can open it up and swivel it around, and as you're driving down the road, air will be deflected into the interior to keep you cool. It's a wonderful feature. I wish modern cars still had this. They don't, but a lot of old school cars did, including this one. Other than that, door panel doesn't have much. For instance, you don't even get like a door storage pocket. Basic car, basic stuff. And when you move into the interior, you can see the basicness of this vehicle is very much confirmed. Obviously, steering wheel in the middle, a big, large, thin-rimmed steering wheel, 2 spokes with the BMW logo right in the center. There is also a BMW logo on the gear selector, which is a little bit troubling because it's very difficult to figure out the shifting situation of this car. It turns out it is a 4-speed manual, and first gear is dead upwards. You just push up in the middle for first, second, third, fourth, and reverse is sort of down and to the left in kind of a weird dogleg J pattern. All of that would be nice to have explained on the gear lever, but that's just not what they do. In fact, explanations for stuff in this car is generally very severely lacking. You can see as you look around a large smattering of unlabeled switches and dials and buttons basically everywhere. On the dashboard, you have a few. Under the dashboard, there's more. You got more in the center. There's a bunch of just unlabeled stuff. You have to just remember and know where things are. Over on the left, this lower one is your headlights. You pull it out, turn them on. The upper one is the dimmer for the interior lights. You have 2 stalks coming off the steering column. They are unlabeled, and in fact, the right one is your turn signals and also your horn. You pull it towards you for the horn. The left one will switch between low beams and high beams. So your headlights are operated on this switch on the dashboard, and then this stalk on the steering column, but then also your parking lights are operated down here with this rather large switch in the driver's footwell. Again, all of this completely unlabeled. In the middle of the dashboard at the top, you have a switch. What does it do? Well, it's the cigarette lighter. It's not a switch at all. It just looks like one, almost to confuse you. Other switches in this car have various functions. The windshield wipers, for instance, are here. There are some climate control related switches that'll bring in outside air or deflect air up or down. But again, none of them labeled. You just kind of have to figure it out. My personal favorite, you just have to figure it out, actually comes in the center. You can see on either side of the parking brake, there are 2 levers that are completely unlabeled. One of those levers is the choke for the engine, for when you start the car and you're trying to restrict the engine's airflow to make sure the idle is correct. That's one of the levers. The other lever is the heater. And they're not labeled, and they look the same, and they're right next to each other. So again, you just kind of had to figure it out. Now, aside from all these levers and switches that did various things, the interior of this car is really pretty basic. You do not have in this car a radio. There's not even a place for it. You didn't get that. Compact entry-level car, no radio. You do not obviously have air conditioning in this car. You do not have seat belts in this car. Even lap belts, they didn't have them. You do, however, because this is a German car from this era, you have that cigarette lighter and an ashtray mounted on the dashboard. They had their priorities right. No seatbelts, no headrests, no airbags, but you got a cigarette lighter and an ashtray. That's what the people really wanted. Of course. Now, in terms of safety equipment, I should mention you do get, over on the passenger side of the car, a handle that you can grab onto. So in the event of an accident, the seatbelt's not here, not going to keep you in place, no headrest, you're going to get whiplash, no airbags, no anti-lock brakes. You have a handle you could grab onto and just hope for the best. And the bare bonesness of this car obviously continues in the back seat. You fold the front seat forward, and by the way, it doesn't latch into place. You can just kind of move it forward. It was only latched into place by your body weight sitting on it. That was the only thing that made sure it didn't come forward. But you want to go to the back seat, you fold it forward, you get into the back, and you can see there is nothing luxurious back here. In this particular car, they've done a great job like refurbishing the interior, putting nice leather with white piping. It all looks good, but it is still a very bare bones thing. You have a handle to climb in and out of the back seat, and then they've hollowed out the trim on the inside of the fender in back, so you have a little storage compartment back there, but that's it. Other than that, you just had a bench. You went back there, you sat down. No headrest, no seat belts. You didn't even really have to conform to a set number of people. It was just how many could fit in back, and that's what you were doing. Not exactly a safe or tremendously luxurious experience, but it was reasonably practical and affordable in Germany at this time. Now, I will say there is one surprising luxury in this interior, and that is that if you look at the gauges, you will note that you have a clock over on the right side, no tachometer, but you have a clock, which I guess works. On the left side, you have a speedometer, which also includes an odometer and even an electronic fuel gauge, which is really a shock to me. I'm surprised. That comes factory in this car, and I'm surprised they did that. It's like one of the few real luxuries. I will say in between, speaking of electronics, in between the gauges, you have 4 lights, and I have no clue what they do. One of them is for the turn signal. It comes on and blinks when you put on the turn signal. One of them is for the headlights. The other 2, I don't know. They were just lights, and you kind of hoped they didn't turn on because then you'd have to figure out what was going on. That is the tour of a very basic early BMW compact car. A very different BMW from the one we know. I'm sure that'll also be true of the driving experience. Let's go find out. All right, driving the BMW 700. I do not often drive cars like this. It is a very interesting experience. Needless to say, this is not like BMWs that we would know. Of course, it's old. I mean, this car is 60 years old. But beyond just that, it's so basic. There's no seat belts that I could find, and there's not much else to it. Like all old cars, it has some smells, but it's also like kind of a hoot. Like it's kind of exciting, right? It's you know, just the sound, and even though it's incredibly slow, obviously given the horsepower situation, it's still like an interesting experience and kind of a fun experience, which you're not really going to get in any sort of modern vehicle, and that's kind of the fun of old cars. It doesn't seem to matter where I have the turn signal lever positioned. The light blinks that the turn signal is on, so we just kind of have to accept that. This is such an interesting experience. It really gives you an idea of 2 things. Number one, it gives you an idea of how far BMW specifically has come. I mean, this car is just so basic and so simple with a flat twin. Like, this is not a fast or exciting or fun driving. Like, that's not really what this car was about. It was a cheap economy car to mobilize Germany at this era. And that's the other thing it really gives you an idea of, like, how far the European car has come. You know, this was based on the BMW 600, which was basically an Isetta that was a little longer. And ultimately, this isn't that much more advanced than an Isetta or a 600 in the sense that, yeah, it has a regular car body, but it's a flat twin and has basically no power. It was just a little car to get people around in post-war, you know, coming out of late 50s Germany. There's no frills, there's nothing exciting, there's nothing luxurious, despite the deluxe name. That just wasn't what this car was about. It really is amazing to look down at the steering wheel and see I'm driving a BMW. It is so far from anything that anyone in the modern world would think of as a BMW. God, this thing is just a total hoot. It is fun in the sense that it's like a totally different experience than any modern car, which is kind of the reason that a lot of old cars are fun, even if they're slow or not good or you know, it's loud and it's kind of weird, and I'm totally enmeshed in the driving experience. What an unusual thing. It actually drives okay. It had some big refurbishment, I think, a few years ago, which makes sense because it seems like it's driving pretty well. It's relatively smooth. I say relatively because, wow, I'm going to try for fourth. I may have hit second. No, I got fourth. Okay. We're probably going 40. There's not much more speed this car is going to give me. I say relatively smooth. It's still loud. Like, you can hear that motor right behind you. Not a lot of effort paid to make this car really like luxurious. It was an economy car, and it was a 50s, early 60s economy car at that. Like, this was not intended to be like a nice car. It was basic transportation. But it is like pretty drivable. I mean, it feels a lot like a modern car. The gear selector situation is pretty crazy. It's very vague, and there's a BMW logo at the top of the shift leather rather than any sort of explanation of the shift pattern, which you just kind of have to figure out. But it's a pretty drivable car. Like, the clutch makes sense, the accelerator makes sense. Like, it's all pretty drivable and usable. It's just amazing how far vehicles have come, how far BMW has come. Like, driving this car now, this car, they sold 200,000 of these. Like, there was a time in Germany when you walked around and you saw a ton of these things everywhere. And it's amazing that but this car was like a very reasonable accepted form of transportation, with no seatbelts, with this tiny interior, with this loud powertrain, with no power, with this you know, thin-rimmed steering wheel, with basically no equipment, no radio, nothing like that, with the gear selector that's so vague. I mean, there's so many complaints by modern standards, but it's charming and cool and interesting, especially when you realize it's BMW. Like, this is a brand that became so special and important, and it's so interesting to see kind of an early example of where it came from. And boy, does it feel like an early example of where it came from. And so that's the BMW 700 Luxus. This vehicle is not any type of BMW as we know it today. It's not quick or fast or fun or sharp handling, fast steering like an E30 or a 2002 or BMWs that came later. It is very much an old school BMW, and it is very interesting to take a trip down BMW memory lane. And you can buy this car on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give the BMW 700 a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 31 out of 100, which puts the BMW 700 here against some kind of relevant cars. Although I haven't reviewed many similar cars, so it's not a great comparison. Regardless, this BMW 700 is really basic, with no radio or climate control or seatbelts or, well, much else. It's not just 60 years old, it's a basic economy car from 60 years ago, so it doesn't earn a very high score. Still, I'm thrilled I got to do a video with it, as it's interesting to see where BMW came from.